We have another question, and this comes to us from a Reformed minister who is going through your course, Introduction to Covenant Theology, Camden. And his congregation has been wrestling with how to reconcile God's eternal decree of the fall, the incarnation, etc., and the well-meant offer of eschatological consummate life in the covenant of works. In other words, how do we maintain both God's eternal decree and the well-meant offer in the covenant of works without making the well-meant offer merely theoretical?
So that is an important question. It's a perennial question that comes around in many different forms. Obviously, here we have it in the specific guise of covenant theology and the covenant of works. But this is the issue that is at the heart of the struggle with the Protestant reformers, the PRs, the Protestant Reformed Church, as they left the Christian Reformed Church, or some would say were forced out. I don't know that history as well as I would do the Presbyterian side of things, but there's certainly a lot going on there, reconciling the eternal decree with God's actions in history and his will and what he commands of his people. So perhaps I'll let Jeff answer this one as well, but I would say that this is a good question, but it's one also that the answers to this question may not be entirely satisfactory to someone who's seeking to be a rationalist, who wants to have some sort of exhaustive rational understanding of this to kind of solve it as a problem. Like Gordon Clark, the rationalist, has a book called The Problem of Evil, or Solved, where all of a sudden there's no more questions about it. But just think, from the larger perspective, God, from all eternity, decreed whatsoever comes to pass, correct? And that includes the fall into sin. Yet God is not the author of sin, and yet God still calls Adam and Eve to obey him in the covenant of works. He calls Adam specifically, saying, and offers him life implicitly, and offers eternal, the threat of eternal condemnation and judgment if he would disobey him. So right there, how do you reconcile that? It's a problem that persists. I would recommend some reading on this, especially the OPC Study Committee report. I think was just headed up by Murray. If I'm not mistaken, Stonehouse might have been on it as well, regarding the well-meant offer of the gospel. And Van Til certainly deals with this question quite a bit in some of his resources. Perhaps, Ryan, you might have some off the top of your head bibliography.
Common Grace in the Gospel would be one where he talks about Van Til's hard to understand concept of earlier grace. Right. And he says that both in the pre-fall order with the covenant of works and the covenant of grace with that well-meant offer, we cannot pit the eternal decree against either one, right, lest we fall into a sort of theological rationalism, and we take those two things, which are properly limiting concepts, mm-hmm, and we obliterate either one or the other thing that Scripture says is true and must be maintained, and we must rest in that mystery. It might be uncomfortable for us as creatures, but we have to rest therein, lest we deny either the gospel or the promise of God as our blessedness and reward held out to the first Adam, which the second Adam has attained through his obedience. So we want to tread lightly here, but we want to maintain what Scripture says in both covenant of works and the covenant of grace.